Hello, fellow psychonauts. Today I wanted to talk about a philosophical concept that I've been developing for the last few years, and I'm still trying to make sense of it. Perhaps you can help me on this. I've renamed this concept many times, but I'm going to cut to the chase, and I'm currently calling it the existential triad of the psychedelic and/or mystical experience. So what I'm trying to do with this concept is try to boil down what exactly is it that makes a psychedelic experience so impactful and existential. So the first characteristic, and arguably the most pleasant of the three, would be the sublime. The sublime has been discussed among philosophers for a long, long time. Most notably, most notably Immanuel Kant and Jean-Francois Lyotard. And the most common metaphor used for the sublime would be the metaphor of the mountain. And this painting is often the most used imagery for when talking about the sublime. And I think why the mountain is so symbolic of the sublime experience is because it represents something that is larger than life. It really puts you into the perspective of just how small and how vulnerable we are. The second existential quality is the terrifying. And it's easy to see how this goes hand in hand with the sublime. And in fact, both Immanuel Kant and Jean-Francois Lyotard talked about how the sublime has a terrifying aspect to it. It's the kind of emotion that makes people poop themselves. It's this sense of not only are we mortal, but like at any point that we can just be ended without mercy. It's also a sense that the universe, or at least a small portion of the universe, actually has malice towards you and wants to see you maybe not even die, but be in suffering. Terrifying or horrifying has been talked about as a philosophical concept by novelists such as Anne Radcliffe, but the terrifying has been talked about in the recent century, and it leads perfectly into the third characteristic of this triad, which is the absurd. The most notable philosophers of the absurd would be Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus. And Sartre talked about the absurd as that moment when you realize how weird and odd everything is. The fact that, I mean, to use this immediate example, the fact that I'm alone in a bedroom talking to a webcam made by people I don't even know, and I'm like just a collection of cells that have gained consciousness through an evolutionary process that's been like on this spinning rock and space in this void. A very existential, terrifying moment when you realize that nothing really makes sense, and that only this immediate understanding is the only thing that really makes sense. But when you broaden the picture of bringing in to context every element of what is going on right now, things become a lot more meaningless and absurd. So yeah, and I think in context of the psychedelic experience, what psychedelics do, honoring the word, is that it is mind revealing. And I think what that means is that when your mind reveals itself, you experience something called non-duality, where you feel as if you are one with the universe and the processes of eternity. Because our psychology operates mainly based upon the default mode network, which is the network that's greatly altered and suppressed and quieted during the psychedelic experience. I'm non-speaking simplistically here, and this may seem a little bit far-fetched, but bear with me. If you could say that the ego is the default mode network, and that when you suppress the default mode network, that's when you experience having a perception of feeling one with the universe, maybe becoming objects like you do on Salvia, or maybe experiencing what it's like to be a different life form, totally abstract or the way we think, via
DMT.
And also feeling like you're everything at once, as well as the subsections. It's a very hard to describe experience. And if you were to be able to see eternity and know that everything goes on forever and all probabilities that can happen will happen in an alternate universe or far off in time, for simplicity's sake, Let's say what psychedelics do is allow an individual to be able to see the greater picture of the eternal process and see or experience their part in it. And when stepping back and looking at this picture of the eternal process, I argue that these three characteristics are the most prominent. And these characteristics are the terrifying aspect that there are realities upon realities of hellishness and suffering, the absurdity of it all, of that there is no inherent meaning to it all other than just existence in general, just existence is the point. And finally, the sublime, the sense of awe and your small part in this process is just so overwhelmingly beautiful. And with this triad, I'm not trying to overly reduce the experience to the fact that there can't be any other characteristics like the grotesque aspects of the psychedelic experience or the or something like that. But I'm just trying to say that for whatever reason, these three aspects seem to be the most prominent in challenging our notions of what it means to exist, and therefore puts us in that existential state. And it's possible that when it comes to things like curing depression and anxiety, when people take psychedelics, it could be the confrontation of one or all of these characteristics, because these emotions are so powerful and so uncommon in our everyday lives. So getting the direct experience with these qualities, I think, could have an amazing life-enriching effect. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you so much to my patrons. Please like, comment, and subscribe because it really helps this channel. I really want to know what you think. What other characteristics jump out to you during the existential, psychedelic, or mystical experiences? And also, what do you think of this philosophical concept? Does it make sense to have this triad, or does it seem overly arbitrary to you? Because I keep wrestling with this. And yeah, I'll see you next week, hopefully. Take care, everyone. That moment when you realize how weird and odd everything is. The fact that I'm alone in a bedroom talking to a webcam made by people I don't even know, and I'm like just a collection of cells that have gained consciousness through an evolutionary process that's been like on this spinning rock in space and this void. Itself. Feel as if you are one with the universe and the processes of eternity. 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 Maybe experiencing what it's like to be a different life form, totally abstract or the way we think. Feeling like you're everything at once as well as the subsections. It's a very hard to describe experience. You're everything at once, 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 you're everything at once. It's a very hard to describe experience.